Hello and welcome to the Born to Produce Minimal House series with me, Demis Hellen, and I'm going to be your tutor guiding you through how to make a minimal house track from start to finish. The whole project is made in Cubase 12 using the built-in plugins or some third-party free plugins so you can follow along easily at home. And of course we're going to take a look at composition, production, mixing, mastering, and as well as all the other bits in between. We don't leave any stone unturned in this series so you can learn everything you need to know about minimal house. And with that said, let's get started producing Minimal House. If you have any questions about what you see across the series, you'll see my email pop up in the banner at the start of each video. So here we are in our blank project. So you can see that we've got just the input and output channels there. And on the right hand side, we've got the Born to Produce Minimal House pack already open with the samples that we're going to use for the groove, including the kick drum. So let's start by dragging in the three that I want. So hi-hat 10. Percussion 7 and top loop 14. So you can see these have extended beyond, but don't worry, these are just tail ends of these particular loops, so we can just trim them down. So everything should be nicely in time. Perfect. So now we can drag in the rest of the samples, but we're going to create sampler tracks instead of creating separate audio tracks and just speed up the workflow. Starting with our kick, I'm going to right click and create sampler track. And you can see it's created a sample track here and loaded our sample into the sampler. As you can see, this is a loop, but don't worry, we'll sort that out in a second. I'm going to drag the rest in. So the crash cymbal with like a sampler track. And I think that's it for those particular samples for now. These two are effects. So we can now focus on the main aspect of this, which is looping this section. Double clicking so we create a MIDI clip, and for ease and quickness I'm going to change this to quarter notes so we can draw our kicks in with the line tool, saving a little bit of time using C3, which is the natural position for the sampler to operate our samples at the correct pitch. You can hear there's an overlap of kicks because the loop is playing in the background, but don't worry, we'll sort that out in a second. I'm going to create a crash as well. Using C3, I'm just going to draw in a long note there so we play the whole sample. Perfect. Okay, so let's address the kick first and then we'll look at the samples and how we're going to get the main groove going. So with the kick, I'm going to load the sampler here by opening this up. And you can see we've got a multitude of kicks which are going to overlap the kicks that we've got loaded in. And we want to make these as an individual kick. So we can click the amp mod button down here. And from this you can see one singular kick, but we're still going to hear the overlapping kicks. And that's because this is just going to shape the sound after what we're going to do, so it's just noteworthy to have the amp mod there. So click back out of the amp mod, and we're going to use these locators here. You can see that we have an S for sample start, and we can have C and S there for sample end. I'm going to bring this back just by clicking and dragging all the way to about there. So we're not getting any of that kick started on the second one, and we've isolated the sample to only play one of all of those samples that are there. You can see it'll just loop in that section. So you can hear that it's sort of still falling out of time a little bit, but if we go back to the amp mod and choose from here, instead of sustain, just choose one shot. It doesn't fall out of time now. Now what it was falling out of time with is one of these loops has a kick drum in it, and we're going to omit that now. So let's jump into that top loop. And we don't want that kick in there. We've already got our kick and we don't want any phasing issues. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom into this particular track. And we're going to take out the kicks in each one. So I'm going to turn on my scissor tool. I'm going to set this to 16ths, back from where we changed it to quarters for the kick. And then we have two options from this point. We can choose snap off, which you can just hit J on your keyboard, and that will give you free rein to click and chop wherever you like. Or instead of doing that, we can choose this to use quantize. So now we're using 16th notes and it'll snap to all of the transients essentially in there. So we can see the kicks are always going to be on every beat of each bar. So we can just go in and click this one. We can go in and click this one, and finally this one. So we're just going to do the first bar for a second, and I'm going to hit backspace by clicking and deleting like that. And let's just focus on this bar. Okay, so that little sort of drop sound I want isolated on its own track, and I don't want that to be part of this loop. I want this to just kind of circle round on a certain section of the loop so we get a bit of a groove out of it, but not with that kind of water drop sound here. So I'm going to click duplicate, and I'm going to delete everything off this track, and we're going to drag this drop down, and I'm going to put it at the end of the bar because that's where I want it to be, maybe every 4 bars. But I'm just putting it in the rough location so we know where that's going to go. So we're going to omit that out of the top loop now. And I'm going to bring this across to replace the gap. It sounds a little bit weird, so I'm going to chop this final section here, get rid of all of that, and copy this over and see what it sounds like. More acceptable. So we now have a little bongo hit there, and it doesn't sound like it's on a loop and kind of chugging along. It's got a nice natural feel to it, and you're not even hearing the gaps in that. That's going to actually add to the groove of things. So from there, we can now leave it on quantize for now, and we can copy this across and put it in the exact position, and we'll do that for the entire section there. And then I can turn on bar for now, just so we don't move anything by accident and have things out of time. So let's have a listen to that all in context with this water drop muted. Much, much better. So the next thing, I want to now add this water drop at the end of that 4 bar. So you can see, because quantize is not on, I'm going to turn this back onto quantize mode so we have control. And I want a groove, I want a swing out of this. I don't want it to be just offbeat as it is at the moment. It's just offbeat. I want it to sort of be just offbeat and give it a bit of swing. Now that's too far in the 16th quantize. Let's have a listen. Just start from here. And we need to unmute that. Mute the crash for a second. It's a bit too late, and what we can do is just turn off with J the grid quantize, and I can place this exactly where I'd like it. So you can use different things in Cubase to make your swing, but this is going to be the way we're doing it here. It's kind of in the right place, but I want this percussion loop up here to also be offset, because at the moment it's on a 16th and I want it to be a little bit swung as well. So let's have a listen to that just in context with the kick. Oh, I'm going to drag it over. Too far, so I'm going to drag it back to the left again. Over to the right. Now getting a bit of a drop in it. And whilst we've got this snap mode off, I'm just going to get rid of the hats on the front of this. You can see it's not quite in line, so I'm going to bring this back to about here. Let's have a listen to the hats. You can hear that's going to work. It's cutting off a bit too early because obviously the loop starts back around again before that finishes playing, but it would bleed into the start of the next loop. So for now, don't worry too much about that. I'm just going to grab this now. Now I'm happy with it being roughly in the right place. I'm going to turn on bar. I'm going to turn back on the grid snapping. And I'm just going to drag this back. So now it's in time and it's not going to have any problems overlapping. And I'm going to do the same with this sample, just make sure it's back, which it is. And this one we can leave. So then when we go in and copy this, we can just copy it all and then press Control or Command D. And you can see it's going to copy it over, but we're going to have a problem with the loop here, obviously starting too late, and we can just bring that back and snap it in. So let's play this bit with this overlapping. Okay, so we're getting the groove, everything's starting to gel together. I'm just going to get rid of this crash symbol that's duplicated. And we're going to check out this top hat loop with all of this now. So let's just unsolo everything but the symbol. Okay, so I'm not happy with the position of this, so we can go back in and tweak this now. See, it's just dragged a little bit more. So my only problem with this is just this little raindrop sound, and I'm just going to come back to the end of this one, hit J so we've not got any of this on. I'm going to bring it back to here, so roughly the same position it is in that section, but one beat backwards. That is now sounding exactly how I would like it, so we can extend this back out so we get the full. And there we are. That is the position. It was too far over. So you can see just a little bit of trial and error. We're going to get the results we want. So we can delete this one. Just drag this over. And we can hit J again to put the snapping back on. And just to save time, I'm going to delete the first one just because everything is in time on this one. And because there's no overlaps of them, when you hit Command D, you're going to see everything on bar 5 is going to be smack bang on bar 5, which it is. Perfect. So we now have a groove set up for our track. We've got the raindrop sound isolated. We've got this loop swinging around nicely, but we've done no processing. You can hear all the samples have been selected to sit well with each other. Always choose your sound design wisely, because the more you choose things that fit together from the get-go, the less processing you're going to have to do to make them fit. If you're trying to make things fit, we're on to a losing battle. So I'm going to rearrange these now to make more sense to me. This is how I work. I'm going to put the kick to the top. I'm going to have the hats and that loop there. I'm going to have the percussive loop there, the raindrop sound, and I'm going to have the crash before that. So it's kind of an additional sound to the groove. I'm going to get rid of the second crash. And we have a nice layout. So I'm going to colour these so we don't get confused for later. All of these are going red. This is what I colour all of my percussion so I can identify exactly where it is. I'm just holding Control on the keyboard to colour these red. So everything now we can see is percussion, and we can label these properly. So kick. Always having track discipline is a good idea. The more you rename things, and everything is going to make more sense. And just as a quick tip, if you're not noticing your actual tracks labeling when you do this, you need to hold Shift on the keyboard when you press Enter, and that will rename all of the tracks on that channel to the same name. And that brings us to the end of this first episode. We've created the groove, we've got everything working together, and what we're going to do in the next one is look at adding some basic EQ curves on there and just looking at the sound and how we need to shape it to suit our track. So I look forward to seeing you in episode 2. I'll see you there.